This is CNN, and she's interviewing the boss of government schools in the state of Oklahoma. He's actually he acts responsibly, so we could call him a superintendent of government schools. And watch this.
You just referenced it, and in this, you're saying that the teaching of the Bible in the classroom is a must. That every teacher must accept that. The Bible includes beheading and incest. Do you support teaching children about those topics?
I support teaching children our history accurately. And what we've seen is the radical left and the teachers union have driven the Bible out of schools. You can't talk about our rights coming from God, as Thomas Jefferson referenced. You can't talk about Abraham Lincoln talking about being on God's side and what he does, and that inspires him. You can't talk about the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King Jr., who routinely referenced examples from the Bible, including from a letter from a Birmingham jail, to say the reason I'm doing the things I'm doing is because of the tenets taught to me by the Bible. So it's essential that our kids understand our history, and we're going to put it back in. And the left is going to continue to try to censor our history. Well, we're not going to allow it here in Oklahoma.
Okay, you didn't answer my question. We're going to get to the history and everything. And by the way, Thomas Jefferson, he advocated for freedom of religion, actually not the establishment of a religion, for one. But are you okay with all teachings of the Bible? If you want to bring it back into the classroom, incest, beheading, is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, right.
Again, I'll answer your question. You might not like the answer, but it is the answer. It is our history that the Bible was referenced.
Oh, she's not taking a position one way or another.
The Bible was referenced multiple times in American history. It had a profound influence on American history. It was the best-selling book in American history. To not teach that in the classroom is academic malpractice. Our kids have to understand our history, and we're not going to hide that from them.
Okay, so will you allow teachers to teach all aspects of the Bible? How are teachers supposed to know what of the Bible to teach and what of the Bible not to teach? It's a simple question, given the fact that the Bible includes also pornographic material, something you've come out against and actually took a teaching certificate away from a teacher for giving access to students of pornographic material.
Pornographic material in the Bible. I had not seen those images or the Dear Penthouse letters. I never believed this would happen to me, but I mean, you respond. You're the guest.
Well, I mean, guy slept with another guy's wife, and his kid was beheaded. As an example, I don't really know how that's pornographic. But then talking about are you talking about the Native American wars that we have with them? There was rape and incest and beheading and gutting and all kinds of nasty stuff. Wait, so if it's in the Bible, it's pornographic. Everything else is history. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to a specific case. Let's go to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for folks who are not biblically relevant, see, I'm turning into literate.
Well-read. Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, my son Bo was a Bible. So in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, you had these two cities that were utterly depraved. And they practiced sex in the streets. If there was a sojourner who came to your town, it was a custom that the men would say, "Hey, we need to have sex with that man."
Yeah, just think like L.A.
Right? Yeah,
like
basically
LA.
The same. Or some areas of San Francisco, and that was a custom. Now, one of the primary sins in Sodom and Gomorrah was when Lot had someone come to his home. These men came and said, "Hey, we need to have sex with this guy. Bring him out so we can know him." And one of the key sins there was they were being inhospitable. But of course, then, sex outside of marriage, and of course, sex in the ways that the Bible prescribes to not occur. And that is seen as pornographic. There's no description of body parts. There's no actual description of a sex act. There's mentions of it. Mm-hmm. And what was the result of that to that town? It seems to me God had something to say about that.
I mean, maybe she's talking about the disclaimers that are at the end of every pornographic video that warn you if you engage in these practices, your life will go down the tubes. Well, the other thing is I'd love to hear what her thoughts were on the Quran.
Okay, cut. We can't. Let's take that out post because we can't. They'd never say that. I've been making the point that they should have a comparative religions class that would be just that. Yeah. Read the Quran and then read the Bible. Sure. All of it.
Yeah.
And draw conclusions. Yeah. This is a very disturbing scene that happened in the Bible. This happened. So Lot and his family, they flee. His wife looks back. She's told not to look back. Do not look back at the city. She does. She refuses to obey God. She looks back. She's turned into a pillar of salt on the spot. Boom, she's gone. Lot and his daughters flee, and his daughters are, I think, convinced that that's it. That's Armageddon. There's just us left in the world, and we're not going to bear children. And this is in the Bible. They get him drunk, and they lay with him. That's the description. Yep. There's no body parts discussed. It's a horribly difficult passage to read, and the result of that was the setting up of two warring tribes that would war against the children of Abraham forever. Mm-hmm. And it exists to this day. Mm-hmm. That was the lesson. And the lesson was they did not trust God. They defiled God's word. They defiled their own father.
Goes back to Abraham and Sarah too, right? Like he didn't trust God that he'd bring him a child, so they preempted it, took his handmaiden. Right, and then said that the two factions of your home will war for forever. Right, and here we are.
Every instance in the Bible where this is illustrated, you see God saying, "Okay, here's the consequences." Mm-hmm. And this brought up this image in my mind, which is the Ashley Biden diary.
Yeah.
And look, I do not say this for fun. I don't say it because it's pleasurable to discuss. I say it because Casey Hunt is deeply concerned about the pornography in the Bible. I don't hear her or see her, I've never seen her, do an in-depth exploration of what did Ashley Biden mean when she says, was I molested? Sexualized at a young age. My dad jumping in the shower with me.
Well, and there's some famous stuff around this, right? It's the old judge, like, you can't describe pornography, but you know it when you see it. But I mean, we can describe it, right? Because it's the glorification of sex without any consequences or any rules whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's the and the implication that there is no negative consequences. Right? The Bible's the opposite of that. It's literally the opposite of that. So to call it pornography is to be historically and literarily illiterate, effectively.
Right. She thought she was laying a clever trap for the guy.
Yeah.
I wish he dived in and said, it's interesting that you bring that up because in every case the Bible discusses people crossing the line in terms of God's prescription for sex.
Right.
The results are terrible. And like your description of pornography is spot on. I would also say that in the case of pornography, the sex act itself is the thing.
It's the point.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who cares about the connection, the human being? None of that. This is Songs of Solomon. Chapter 4, verse 12. And this is from the man to the woman. You are my private garden, my treasure, my bride, a secluded spring, a hidden fountain. It's a beautiful description of love. It's physical, right? It's I think, beautiful way to describe a man describing his wife, my bride. And from the woman to the man. Like the finest apple tree in the orchard is my lover among you other young men. Is my lover among other young men. I sit in his delightful shade and taste his delicious fruit. Now, you could look at that and say, okay, that's tantalizing. Is that pornographic? I don't think so. But what are they discussing here? God is presenting sex and sex between married people as an act of pleasure, an act of love, and an act of admiration.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's pornographic, so is the Sistine Chapel. Right? I mean,
Right.
Here's the other thing that irritates me about this, and I think this is a great... In my opinion, I think it's a great one to take to other people or when conversations come up using this as an example. This is a perfect example of the undertones and the presence of constant bias in the media, right? We're going to come out and we're going to make a statement. We're going to underlie the conversation with this statement. And then she goes, I wasn't drawing any conclusions. And I'm like, you just said the Bible's pornographic. That's how we're setting this conversation up. Right. The most read book in the history of mankind, the most copied book in the history of mankind, the book that happens to be the basis for our judicial system. Are you joking? Right? Like it, and that's the platform that we're going to start building the conversation on, right? And it's that gentle bias that just people are like, what do you mean it's bias? Just roll that clip and go, this is how we're going to set the conversation up.
Right. And she says that. And here's the thing that I think people should understand who haven't spent a lot of time within the Mockingbird medium, right? When I worked next door to Cairo Radio.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's some good people at Cairo, our dear friends, God rest Dory Monson, brilliant man, talk show host, great servant of the Lord. But when you're in those circles, there are things that are just true, and they never check. And I know I've told this tale. I won't belabor it. But when I heard my news person say during the show, Congressman Maxine Waters explains that bullets in AR-15s are the size of footballs, and these guns can fire 10,000 of them in a second. She's on mic. My mic's off. You hear me in the background. Yeah. And she looks at me, and I cover my mouth. Oh, sorry. And I did not on the air. I said, well, Heather, I need to talk to you about that piece in a second.
Yeah. I started looking on my phone immediately to see if I could find one.
I know.
I was
got
in.
ripped off.
Yeah, I was in. I was like, this isn't what I got.
Right. Where do I sign up for those?
Not that I have one, by the way.
No, gosh, no. This fishing accident.
Yep.
But they have this. That's their lingua franca is these things are true because everybody says so. Right? Everybody says this. These things are true. This is also from the Bible. Should an engaged man and woman have sex if they're, quote, married in their hearts? And this is from crosswalk.com. Biblically, no, they should not. This is supported by 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 36 through 37. But if a man thinks he's treating his fiancée improperly and will inevitably give into his passion, let him marry her as he wishes. It is not a sin. But if he has decided firmly to not marry and there's no urgency, he can control and he can control his passion. He does well not to marry. If he's decided to not marry her and he can control his passion. So there's also this restraint. Pornography doesn't contain any restraint. And well, I mean, unless it's people being tied up, but that's the point of it, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. With no consequences.
Right.
Right? Yeah, there's no STDs, there's no broken homes. Nobody you can have your cake and eat it too, and it's really attractive. It's fun.
You made this case, the same one I did about the Quran. Okay, hey, now do Muhammad.
Yeah.
So here's this comparison. If you read the Bible and the Old Testament back to back, number one, you'll find out, the Bible and the Quran back to back. Number one, you'll find out that the Quran is very difficult to read. It is clumsy, I think, and perhaps, I don't mean to just needlessly offend. That's just literary. But you notice this. In the beginning, Muhammad is peaceful. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's all get along. Mm-hmm. Peace, love, and understanding. Like Elvis Costello. Peace, love, and understanding. Then as he gains power, he starts smashing babies' heads against walls. And even the rocks will call out, oh, warrior, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come and smash his head. In the case of the Old Testament, in the beginning, there was a lot of violence. And God was saying, hey, I need you to clear these people out. These people have sinned against me. I'm going to let you conquer these areas and these tribes. And every time the Hebrew people, Jewish people screw up, God's there with correction. When Jesus, the more powerful Jesus becomes, the more submissive he becomes. Because at any time Jesus wanted to, if the Lord Jesus said, hey, you know what, let's get 10,000 people and go attack Rome. It would have happened that day. And factually, he could have called down 10,000 angels. Like the minute they put him up in the tree, he could have gone, hey guys, watch this.
Well, and it's so historically illiterate, right? So if that's the definition of pornography, then we can't study the Mongols and Genghis Khan in circa 1200. Right? Because you go, like, that's the way things were done back then. I mean, You beat somebody, you took their kids. You go look what the Mongolians did. You want to talk about, horrible stuff. I mean, they took it to a whole nother level.
I know.
Like public in front of people. Like, right. It was hardcore. But history is not pornographic.
Right.
It's history. Right. You've got to know the history, and to insinuate that information it's just a mockery. It's just historically illiterate and it's garbage.
Right. And that's exactly the right way to put it. It's a mockery.